I have real tea this time. This is, because I want it to be immersive here, this is one of the Alice in Wonderland teas that you can get at Disney, and I have it in my Disneyland mug. So, you know, I'm just setting the aesthetic, you know, for this video. Gotta set the mood. It's, I think, day 6. It is day, is it day 6? Day 5? Day 6 in quarantine. I've lost my mind. I've drawn on my face. I hope you all are doing well despite all the craziness that's happening in the world right now. I'm certainly not doing great depression-wise, but hopefully making a video and having, you know, again, a creative outlet, you know, drawing on my face will help. But anyway, let's get into it. This story is going to be a little bit different. This is not a cosplay story, but it's still something that seemed relevant and something that people I figured would be interested about. I talked a little bit about it to my patrons on my Patreon Discord server, and they were all very interested to know about my experiences. So I thought that it would be cool to share firsthand what this was like. So basically, I was in Disneyland for the first time ever, first of all, but I was also there right before and even during the closure, as you guys probably know, because of what's happening in the world. And because YouTube is going all Big Brother on us, I don't think I can actually use the term, you know, because they're censoring videos, I think, that have to do with that, or they're otherwise suppressing them and demonetizing them. And, you know, it would be nice to be able to make, you know, my usual $5 off this video. That would be nice. So I'm going to basically refer to as the ordeal, because it certainly has been an ordeal. And hopefully that will appease the YouTube gods and I can maybe get money off of this video, because again, it would be nice. A girl's gotta eat. But anyway, if you don't know, right now, Disneyland and Downtown Disney are completely closed because of the ordeal. And apparently same goes for all Disney stores around the world. And I mean, I think pretty much like all of their current like businesses are just closed because of the ordeal. And my friends and I happened to be in Disneyland, like I said, right before the park closure. To preface this, we weren't initially going to go. That same weekend, we were supposed to go to Emerald City Comic-Con, but Emerald City Comic-Con, since there had been a huge, you know, outbreak of the ordeal in Washington, people were a little bit on edge. It was all kind of just a crap show, really. So they, you know, initially they were saying, oh, we're just, you know, we're gonna take extra sanitization measures, we're gonna make it safe, it's gonna be great. They were also offering refunds to anybody who wasn't comfortable going. So a bunch of people decided to get their passes refunded. A bunch of guests and a bunch of artists and a bunch of vendors pulled out. And then eventually the week of the convention, Emerald City Comic-Con announced that they were going to be postponing it until the summer. So effectively canceling it for that weekend. Up until that point, my roommate Justine, who's like the ultimate Disney expert, she was looking at flights and accommodations to Disney, kind of as a joke, sort of. And she was like, listen, we can get super cheap flights, we can get super cheap hotel. Our travel and accommodations alone would be the same amount as our Emerald City Comic-Con hotel was supposed to be. So like, if it were to get canceled, we could just go to Disney. This started out as a joke. And then the con announced that they were gonna be canceled. And we were like, guess we're going. There was a huge shift in how the ordeal was being covered. So before that, it was kind of like, I don't know, people were just like, oh, you know, be safe, wash your hands, but they weren't treating it as like the big emergency that it is right now. So we were still at that stage when it was sort of a deal, but it wasn't like too big of a deal. Unlike Washington, California has had like very few cases. There's been no cases at Disney, so we thought, okay, it's gonna be fine. You know, we'll wash our hands. It's just another flu. Like we weren't worried and we can go for super cheap. And then while we were down there, was when things took a huge shift and it became, you know, the more kind of pressing matter as it is right now. So it's very interesting to kind of see that very quick shift. So we booked this really, really last minute trip to Disney. We're super excited. It's my first time ever going. Even though I'm not a fan of the majority of Disney movies, especially not the ones that are like really promoted at the parks, I've still always wanted to go just because like the aesthetic looks fun, the rides look fun, the food looks great. So I was like, yeah, like I'm into it. Even if I'm not like a huge fangirl, still really interested in going. So it was very, very exciting. So we're going to fly from Vancouver to California on the Wednesday and then stay Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and then head home Sunday evening. So we're gonna get 3 full days in the park and then head home, and it was all gonna be great. It did end up being great. There were definitely some bumps, but things did not go according to plan, which I will obviously get into. We get there on Wednesday. It's beautiful. It's sunny. It was supposed to to rain. It wasn't. We were like, okay, this is gonna be great, because the rest of the forecast said that it was going to rain the whole time that we were there, and we were like, oh, this is gonna be fine. Little did we know things were not gonna be fine. So day one arrives, we get there bright and early, and we decide to do California Adventure on the first day, and then we're gonna do Disney for the 2 following days. We get there, it is slightly raining, but we're thinking, okay, hopefully it will clear up. But pretty quickly we realized that it was not gonna clear up. It ended up being some of the heaviest rain that we have ever experienced, and that comes from all of us who live in Vancouver, one of the like rainiest places on the planet. It was unreal how wet and cold it was. We were not having a good time. So like the first part of our day, we were pretty miserable because it was so rainy. We really couldn't do anything. Pretty much everything was closed. We were basically just looking at the stores, which was fun for a little while, but obviously, you know, you want to do actual activities, but like I said, everything is closed. And then there was this nice shift halfway through the day. We went to see a show because it was like something dry to do. And then we decided that like once that was done, we were gonna head out because it was just like we were not having a good time. We go to this show, we come out of the show, and like miraculously all the rain is gone. And we're like, okay, we're gonna salvage this day. This is gonna be great. So we're looking in one of the shops, and that's when my roommate gets an alert on her phone. This was basically the first announcement of it. She gets this alert on her phone saying that because of the ordeal, the park was going to be closing on the 14th, which was going to be our final day there. So that was going to be the Saturday. A lot of people probably wondered like how it was announced. Everybody learned about it through like alerts on their phone. If you have the Disneyland app, which most people do there, whenever you open the app, it gave you that same message. No matter how many times you just missed it, like every time it would like multiple times be like, hey, by the way, like we're gonna be closing on the 14th. My roommate saw the announcement initially through a social media post and then saw the official alert on the app. And then after that point, we had like a bunch of friends immediately texting us being like, oh my gosh, did you hear? Like they're closing the parks. Oh my gosh, are you guys okay? Which was like, it was nice that everybody was concerned, but you know, by the 10th message, we were like, guys, we're here. We know that they're closing the parks. And like, you know, we're not in any danger. Like they're not going to be locking us in. Like we're fine. I think at that point, that day had been such an ordeal that when I learned about the closure, I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. Like it sucks, but at least, you know, I'm looking at the positive. I'm like, at least they're not shutting it down today. At least we still get today and tomorrow. Like that's not as good as 3 days, but at least we still get like 2 full days in the parks. None of this really came as a shock to me. It was definitely a disappointment, but it was like, yeah, given how things are going right now, that sounds about right. So immediately after we get that alert, we go to the guest services desk to see if we can get a refund. And like immediately there was this huge lineup of people. At that point, it started raining a little bit. Like it didn't last, but there was a little bit of rain at that point. There's this huge line of people. Luckily we're under umbrellas, but like we're all huddling under these umbrellas in this long line, trying to see if we can get our money back after Disneyland is going to get closed because of the ordeal. Like it was just such an unreal situation. But again, I'm trying to be optimistic in this. We eventually get in to talk to a cast member. One thing that came up on my Discord server that people were interested in regards to this situation was how the cast members handled it and like what they told us and everything. So at that particular point, it had just been announced and they really didn't have any information. They were all very nice. They were all trying to be very helpful, but the cast members and us were pretty much on the same page. They explained to us that they had only just been told that the parks were going to close, and that was really the only information that they had at that point. They hadn't heard anything from, you know, higher up. You know, everybody was pretty much on the same page. Nobody really knew what was going to be happening. They explained to us that we were very likely going to get a refund of some sort, and that we were either going to be able to downgrade our passes to a 2-day from a 3-day pass, or we could move the 3rd day over and like reschedule it for another time if we were planning to come back to the parks later, if that makes sense. And we said that it would be much more ideal for us to like downgrade the pass, and they said like, yeah, that's totally understandable. They will most likely have that as an option, but we don't exactly know at this point. We're like, okay, that's cool. So they told us to come back the following day and they would have more information at that point. They'd be able to help us, which was what ended up happening. So we go through the rest of the day. We managed to salvage the day. I will be posting vlogs from our trip there, so you'll see, you know, more of the story. But for right now, I'm trying to stick to the relevant points, you know, anything relating to, you know, the shutdown. So day 2, we went to Disney, and this was the day before the park shut down. So this was the final day that the parks would be open for, you know, at least 2 weeks. We don't even know. So kind of a crazy time. It was incredibly dead. Probably the first thing people want to know. It was very, very dead. I obviously don't have anything to compare that to, but I have my roommate with me who's been there many, many times. You had plenty of room to walk around. We went to eat at, I think it's called the Jolly Holiday Cafe. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's the Mary Poppins themed cafe. We could immediately get a table. My friends explained like, On a regular day at Disney, that would not have been possible. The wait times for everything was super quick. Again, with the 2 people who I was with there, they said that it was easily like the most dead they've ever seen the parks, which makes a lot of sense. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with the ordeal. And at this point, we're kind of midpoint throughout that shift where all of the coverage and how society was reacting to the ordeal, it was more relaxed versus when it was starting to get more strict. And by our last day in California, like things had really kind of buckled down. This second day was when we learned that we were going to have to be quarantined when we came home. In regards to the operations of the park, how did the ordeal affect it? Honestly, it didn't really have an effect on like what rides were open, what characters were there, etc. The thing that really impacted the operations of the park was just the weather. A lot of characters didn't come out just because it was rainy. There was supposed to be a parade, but they had to kind of downgrade that to just driving some characters by in some carts because of the weather. But the ordeal didn't have an effect on really any of the park's operations. It was all the weather. So it would have been very interesting to kind of compare that if it had been a sunny day, what things would have been like. I feel like they would have been kind of more normal. All the characters who we met were still very huggy. Like Captain Marvel still like shook our hands, and it was the firmest and most powerful handshake I've ever received. All the characters were still very huggy. They didn't stand 2 feet away from us. It all felt very normal. The ordeal had no, again, real bearing on how the characters treated us, on how cast members treated us, on how anything was operating in the park. It was really all just the weather, and that was basically just really limited character interactions. But most of the rides were open. Some of them would like close at one point of the day and then reopen later when the weather got better. Didn't really know what was going to be open when, but we pretty much managed to do everything that we set out to do. So then there's the whole issue of our passes. So we go over to City Hall, which is where their guest services is. We talked to a lady. She was super, super nice. We actually had a really great conversation with her. At that point, none of the cast members knew if they were going to be getting paid for the 2 weeks. Luckily, the day after, we did see a news article saying that everyone was going to be paid for that 2 weeks. That was awesome, but obviously we didn't know that while we were still in the park. So it was very awkward bringing up the closure with anyone whenever it would come up in conversation. If they weren't going to be getting paid for it, that's just a really awful situation for them, and we didn't want to bring that up with them, right? So it was very, very awkward, and I don't know, there's just kind of this air of uncertainty whenever we were talking to cast members about like, you know, anything having to do with the closure. But luckily, the company did the right thing and is going to be paying everyone, so thumbs up there. They knew that they were able to downgrade our passes, so that's what we had done. The lady was very nice. I think you did have the option to like move the day over, and if you had an annual pass, they wouldn't give you a refund for the 2 weeks, but they would carry that 2 weeks over, so the expiration date of your pass would just be extended. All right, then we get to the very end of the day. They had Mickey and Minnie out at the very end of the day near closing. These were not characters that I was like super like hardcore into meeting, but I was like, well, I mean, you know, if you're at Disney, like you might as well. So since we hadn't met Mickey yet, we decided to go and get photos and all that jazz. We get into the lineup, and eventually the character attendant tells us that we are where they're capping the line. So we were the last people to meet him before the parks closed for 2 weeks plus. We don't even know if it's going to be just 2 weeks, which was pretty crazy. And that was the end of our day. So we were leaving on the Sunday, but not until the evening. So we had to check out of our hotel in the morning. We were gonna have this huge chunk of time, and then we had to eventually catch our flight, which we decided to go catch our flight much earlier than we needed to because of all of the craziness at the airports. So we decided to hit up Downtown Disney. During the closure, Downtown Disney was still going to be open, but the actual parks were going to be closed. So we get there, and it was just like the eeriest thing ever. I do have footage. We still did have to go through the security checkpoint, so the security man got to see all of our dirty laundry in our suitcases, so that was a fun experience. Everyone was very nice. They were all in very high spirits. There's the area with the 2 park entrances, and then if you keep going forward, it's Downtown Disney. They usually play music there, and they still had the music playing, but it was so eerie because it was pretty much empty. Like there were a few other people there who were taking photos of like the parks being empty and everything, but it was pretty much a ghost town. We walk over to Downtown Disney. There are a few people there. We saw like a few little girls who were still like dressed in princess dresses, you know, I guess trying to make like the most out of what was there and what was open. There were still some families, but it was still like very, very dead in comparison to how it usually is. A lot of people who we saw in the various shops had lengthy conversations with us because again, they had nothing else to do. There was this very kind of sad air over Downtown Disney. But we still had a nice time. We ate some beignets, which are amazing. And then we decided, since there was really nothing else to do, we'd pretty much looked at everything at that point. We went off to the airport. We were very lucky that really we did not get at all held up at the airport. It was actually very straightforward getting home. Our planes getting to and from the park, you could smell the cleaner in them. Like, I've never been able to smell a plane that much before, but it was like as soon as you went in, there was just like, you could smell cleaning products. Like, they took very good care of making sure that everything was well disinfected. And then we touched down in Vancouver, and when I say that that's the emptiest I've ever seen YVR airport, like, it was crazy. It felt abandoned in there. It was so eerie. We were pretty much like the only group of people there was this group of people coming in from California, and we're all looking at each other like, what is happening? This is so crazy. We go through customs. It was surprisingly, it was the quickest trip through customs I've ever had. When the lady was handing back my passport and everything, she gave us a little, hold on, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, she gave this little pamphlet that has stuff about the ordeal on it. So it has like the symptoms that you're supposed to look for. It tells you to self-quarantine. It actually doesn't have a lot of information on it. This is the extent of really how the ordeal affected our travel home, which was very interesting because I heard that other airports were just absolutely chaotic. But yeah, they didn't do any medical screening for us. They literally just gave us this pamphlet, so it was very interesting. Anyway, yeah, so that's the story. I hope that this was interesting. I felt very awkward telling this story. I don't know why. It wasn't a cosplay story time, so it felt a lot more challenging to tell this story. I hope I did an all right job. I feel so awkward in this entire video. I'm so sorry. But anyway, I hope that this was something, you know, entertaining and maybe interesting to help get you through your own self-quarantine. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. Please stay safe. Please stay healthy. Please self-quarantine. It's very important. It might not seem like it, but by self-quarantining and doing social distancing, you are helping to protect those who are older and or immunocompromised. And it's a very important thing to do to keep other people safe. Anyway, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I'll see you guys all next time. Until then, pan faces, please be sure to take care. Bye.